Hey everyone, this is Cameron from Renegade Animation on renegadepopculture.com. If you like what we do, please give us a like, a follow, and a rating on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to us. We are everywhere. Make sure to share out our episodes, and if you can, consider supporting our Patreon. That way we can keep doing what we love, and that's talking about the wild world of animation. And now, on with the show.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Renegade Animation on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host for this evening. Joining me, as always, is the animation guru himself, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy.
And today we got a great episode for you. We are finally talking about Batman Caped Crusader. Oh, but first, we do have to talk about the recent SpongeBob movie, Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie.
This movie has the worst kind of luck. Earlier this year, it got entirely leaked online through Twitter because you could just do that now. You can upload full movies onto Twitter. And it just got ripped apart. Everyone was calling it the worst movie ever because they haven't seen enough movies, literally, ever. So this movie is directed by Liza Johnson with a screenplay written by Tom Cern and Kaz, where we follow Sandy Cheeks, the intellectual, science-driven squirrel voiced by Carolyn Lawrence. One day while out and about, doing her science, Bikini Bottom gets taken away and is put into this aquarium inside this marine biology science center / water park, which totally doesn't come off like they took that plot point from Finding Dory. It is up to Sandy and her best friend SpongeBob to make their way to Galveston, Texas to save everyone, while along the way we finally meet Sandy's family. Man, I wanted this to be better. I remember when we got the first image for this movie, I remember I was very excited. It looked like it was going to use the animation style from the last movie, which had that really cool, snappy animation. Unfortunately, what we got was not that. Let's talk about the good first, because I don't want this just to be a constant negative vibe for this section of the podcast. While the animation is obviously not as good as it was last time, this obviously had a smaller budget.
Mm-hmm.
The character animation itself, at least on the main characters, still was pretty good. They squash and stretch and are very emotive. It's unfortunate that they went back to doing normal, generic CGI physics when it comes to walking and running and such, instead of having the quick nature of the last film. But the characters do look good.
I like the character designs. Sandy especially still has a lot of detail with like the fur and everything. It's not the character designs that are a downgrade as far as like the production. It's kind of like what you said, the movements are not as snappy.
Like they try. Like SpongeBob is very expressive, for better or for worse. It's just not the last movie, and maybe that's our fault for thinking it was going to be, because this was announced very much in the tail end of Netflix finally realizing they can't be spending money left and right like crazy, because they are already burning money through stuff like Rebel Moon and apparently another Gray Man, if we're ever going to actually get another Gray Man.
Yeah, unlikely. This seems like it was, I don't want to say this is like a TV movie, but it has kind of that TV animation quality, which is, at least it's better than Camp Coral. So that's a plus.
I think it's somewhere in the middle of Camp Coral and theatrical range. The models themselves look really good. It's the fact that the texture work doesn't quite blend well with the environments of Bikini Bottom, and when we are more in out of the ocean with the humans and such. And that's where a lot of the technical issues come into play. The characters don't mesh well with the live action elements.
Yeah, no. That's the stuff that definitely did not work as far as like having any sort of like cohesive world building. And also the human characters just really suck.
Now, I will say, I did like the voice cast. I think Carolyn Lawrence and Tom Kenny, Mr. Lawrence, Clancy Brown, Bill Fagerbach, and Roger Bumpass are still very pleasant. They are still good, like as their characters, even if you can tell they are hitting the older elements of who they are as, actual people, and are not able to do any of the more bombastic stuff as much as in previous incarnations, the seasons and the movies. But I'm not going to be mad at the fact that this is one of the few animated movies to come out where the voice cast gets top billing and not just the celebrity people that they have.
That's a good point. And about the certain voice actors aging, I've been hearing a lot of comments about Tom Kenny specifically, but honestly, I think Clancy Brown is the one who is the most notably, I don't want to say aging out of his role, but you can tell there's some wear and tear on his voice.
And I mean, and that happens. We talked about this before with the Proud Family and such, where everyone was just like, Penny sounds older. Oh my God. And we were like, chill. That happens. We don't stay our childlike ages and keep our childlike voices.
Exactly.
As we get older. Even though they weren't in the movie a whole lot, even though I really wanted them to be, I liked Craig Robinson. Gray Delisle is also really good in this. Carrie Walgren and Johnny Knoxville. I was a little amazed that Johnny Knoxville was in this because I couldn't really tell it was him. Not in a like, wow, he was invisible in the role. It's just like, oh, it's Johnny Knoxville. All right.
I liked all of those characters, and I would say the family part is kind of my favorite part of the movie. I do really wish that more of this movie was focused on Sandy reuniting with her family. I get why SpongeBob had to tag along because he is the face of the franchise, but it's kind of hard to call this a spin-off when the marquee character is like a major supporting character.
So let's get into everything else about this movie. Yeah, SpongeBob gets regulated to secondary comedic relief. And as great as Tom Kenny is as SpongeBob, he is extremely grating. And the fact that SpongeBob is so hyper in the background most of the time and is trying to constantly say a funny joke, it got really annoying really fast. It was grating. It's a shame because I don't want to say Tom Kenny was annoying.
That's the thing. The character was, I'll say the character was more so than even some of the worst episodes of the series. This time he really felt flanderized.
He does nothing throughout the story. He doesn't have any drive outside of to be Sandy's sidekick. And it's weird because they give Sandy this robot horse that doesn't really come into play until the last part of the movie. So it's like a Deus Ex Machina pony, I guess. Then when we get to the Sandy family reunion, you think that that's going to be the big like conflict of the movie of Sandy reconnecting with her family, who are a bunch of circus folk. And yet, they're not in the movie a whole lot. They have like a little bit of a vibrant personality to each of them, but after they are introduced, at least at the very end of Act 1 and a little bit into Act 2, they're gone for a mass majority of the movie.
Total, they have like two big scenes. They're so far apart that because we have to focus on the water park and the evil scientists.
Oh man, this water park thing. Okay, so we get the scientists that apparently worked with Sandy, even though we have no reference or recollection of them like being referenced in the past. I don't think it has ever been mentioned that Sandy was working with some Galveston like marine science center like at all. And I mean, I know that's weird to bring that up because, SpongeBob has never been about the continuity. Like recently, there was this funny little gag where SpongeBob's biggest secret is apparently he wears a clip-on tie. Even though people are like, but in the past, he put on a tie. It doesn't matter. It's a funny joke. SpongeBob is one of those franchises where you can break quote-unquote continuity just to tell a funny joke.
How about that clip from the Patrick show where his house is a giant turtle?
I mean, that's funny.
Yeah.
I think, or that sequence where Patrick is doing a whole choose your own adventure kind of thing. And he's telling people, please, for the love of God, choose the lollipops and not the spikes. And he still gets impaled by the spikes. Like, I mean, I know people gritch and groan about this franchise, but, if there are still laughs to be had, then I'm glad that the writers are still having fun with doing that. And some of that fun is in this movie. You can kind of find it, but the laughs are so inconsistent. And you and I talked about this. Where is the biggest dead zone of comedy in this movie?
It's the humans.
So we got Ilya Israelis Polino as Phoebe and Maddie Carteropol as Kyle, who were these two scientists that apparently were working with Sandy at one point, who are now working under Tsunami, who is played by Wanda Sykes. I can tell what kind of jokes they were going for, but man, they were either told to go deadpan, way too dead, or I don't know what happened. They were not funny. They were more grating than funny. And I don't know, man. If you're going to have human characters, they have to be entertaining. And yet, the human writing is very much the weakest part of the movie.
Which is very unfortunate because as a comedy, I just want to point out that some of Liza Johnson's TV credits include things like What We Do in the Shadows, Dead to Me, Silicon Valley, which is a show that honestly doesn't really hold up. She directed one of the best episodes of The Last of Us.
I wonder what happened here because it seems like SpongeBob is never allowed to be as zany as it once was with its comedy and storytelling. The first film was like this great grand adventure. And then while the second film didn't have as tight of a story, the second half where they have to go above water to take down Antonio Banderas was a lot of fun. And even with Sponge on the Run, which we were just kind of okay with and found it underwhelming, the animation there helped push you through the worst parts of that movie. And here, everything with the humans is so boring. And yet they try so hard with the third act twist of why they are doing this. And then they reveal that Tsunami is just a human head on a robot body, like some kind of Futurama creation. And man, that's where the CGI starts to fall apart.
Oh, God, yes.
It doesn't look good. It seems like they just weren't giving them time and money to make it look good. Like, this whole movie feels like they weren't given a budget, even though it's freaking SpongeBob. You have all the money in the world for this franchise. Give it a good budget. And in that whole flashback scene where Sue, like the whole reason why she's doing this, turning the inhabitants of Bikini Bottom into toys or huggable sea critters, is because she wanted to hug a sea critter but never could. And when they do the flashback stuff, they throw on adult Wanda Sykes' head onto a child body, which our friend Jess said it looks like when George Lopez in his sitcom show did flashback sequences where they put George's adult head on a child body. It looked uncanny. It was creepy and weird, but it was also kind of funny because you're just so caught off guard with how that happens. And it happens here in the movie. But instead of being funny or delightful, it's just weird and creepy looking.
It's not like funny because the execution and the comic timing is like all there. It's funny in that like nervous laughter kind of way, like what the hell am I looking at kind of way.
Well, it's because you're sitting there and you know they just could not make this work on whatever scale that they had to work with. And that's a shame. You probably could have done this if you just kept it to animation, like full on animated, because at least it would have looked like a better budgeted Camp Coral episode. And now it's like, oh, this movie would have died at the box office if it was put there, like released into theaters. Because if we already have a short tolerance to like how cheap something looks because of production pipelines and the usual Netflix shenanigans, everyone would have been walking out of this movie if they had to pay $12 or something for a ticket.
This thing would have been eviscerated if it played in theaters.
And it's a shame that a Sandy Cheeks movie couldn't be better. They had a chance to do that with the family members, but the family doesn't hate Sandy for going in, getting into science. They're supportive of her. They just miss her being part of the circus.
I actually like that. I don't know if I would have been on board with like there being like some sort of arbitrary conflict between Sandy and her family. I just wanted to spend as much time with them as possible.
Okay, well, it's like if you weren't going to make the family the conflict, then you needed a stronger hook than someone from Bikini Bottom, or in this case, all of Bikini Bottom getting kidnapped. Since that's been kind of the plot for the last three movies. Except like the second one was more, okay, the Krabby Patty recipe got stolen. Then the third movie was Gary got stolen. And now all of Bikini Bottom got stolen. And the story just isn't strong enough to justify not even having a internal family arguments and such. Like it would have been a tired trope, I agree, but it would have been something to invest into because like after that, there's not much else to the story. A lot of the side characters don't get much to do. Mr. Krabs probably has one decent joke to him. Everyone was like, oh my god, Squidward is gay because of him fawning over Johnny Knoxville's character, but everyone was like making a big deal about this. But then you actually watch the movie and it's as flaccid as when Disney does this, where they're like, we're going to have our first gay character. And it's like a character in the background. And it's like,
it's even quicker than that. It's just one blink and you miss it gag, and that's it.
That's what it is. That's all it is. And I don't know, man. The music was okay. I wanted this to be better, man. Like, not just because I'm a diehard SpongeBob fan, but because SpongeBob is one of the most successful franchises out there. And you're telling me you can't make a better movie or give your team the time to make a better movie than what we got? Maybe it's time for SpongeBob to hang up the towel then, even though that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, can't kill the sponge.
If you're not going to kill the sponge, then Nickelodeon and Netflix or wherever they make these new SpongeBob movies need to go the distance. Don't just stick to the familiar. I know we're getting another SpongeBob movie in production, and I think next year we're getting a Plankton movie. And instead of looking forward to it, I'm hesitant. And that shouldn't be the case. If you're getting hesitant about new releases, then that means you're showing disinterest with the franchise and or the franchise is hitting another jumping the shark moment. Because if a Sandy Cheeks movie is this middling and underwhelming, I can't imagine how good a Plankton movie is going to be. Even though I love Mr. Lawrence as Plankton. Like I said, wish it was better. If you want to see it, go ahead and do it. I think for me and my rankings, it's stuck somewhere between Despicable Me 4 and Garfield. Not the worst. It's not great. I think I have it above Garfield because of the character animation and the voice cast. But I don't like it enough for it to be above Despicable Me 4 with its obviously superior French animation.
I think that's fair. I have it below both of those, even though I do like the character animation here and the voice cast is really good. I just think the story just is all over the place. It's too big for a spin-off, but also too small at the same time. It's in that really weird nebulous area where the movie just doesn't really come together.
It's a shame. I wanted it to be better. And SpongeBob deserves better. They shouldn't be making mediocre movies off of one of the most popular franchises out there. Let's get down to business and talk about some guy walking around in a bat costume fighting crime with Batman caped Crusader. So let's get this out of the way first. This is not a continuation of the 90s series. I think that has been clear, but I understand people thinking it was going to be because of Bruce Timm being attached to the project. This takes place more in like a 19 or
40s.
40s, thank you, time period. And it's essentially a Batman year one kind of scenario where Batman is still new to fighting crime. He doesn't have the like over the top number of things in his tool belt. He is still going about it with basically a grappling hook and his two fists of justice to take down the bad guys. But he's not going to be like, oh, I have an item for this exact situation. Because, that's what the whole joke was with the Adam West Batman. Because, you got to have that shark repellent.
Of course.
It just makes all the sense in the world to carry it around with you. But that's really it. It's more focused on the mystery and crime detective solving side of things. There are technically superpowers in this show from some of the villains, but we'll get into it a little later about how some of these villains are handled. But don't expect it to be like Batman fighting like the Injustice League or whatever the alternate universe Justice League was. It's very much everyone is human, even the ones with some kind of special power.
They really went deep into leaning into like the very beginning of Batman's history, all of like the 1940s aesthetic. And this is very much leaning heavily into film noir, more like the pulpier side of Batman. And even though it would have been nice to have like a continuation of Batman the Animated Series, There are multiple reasons why that just can't happen, one of them being the unfortunate passing of Kevin Conroy. But what we have instead is still pretty excellent.
Yeah, so let's talk about that next. Hamish Linklater, who most people would know from Legion, The New Adventures of Old Christine, The Crazy Ones, and of course, Midnight Mass. Batman himself is not in the show a whole lot. I'm not saying like he appears once and then only appears at the end. This isn't like what was that like term that was used to explain the frustration with how Netflix and streaming service shows are pacing themselves? It's like Surf Dracula or something.
It's not that. Like, Batman will show up in, well, it's a Batman
Every
show.
episode.
So, yeah.
Like he shows up, but most of the runtime is on the police detectives, Bruce Wayne as himself, and then Batman shows up once or twice in every episode to take down some baddies, get some information, and take care of whatever antagonist he has to for that episode. It's very like story of the week episodes. And I think that works. I mean, listen, if you want Batman to be front and center, you can watch something like Batman Brave and the Bold, where 99.9% of that show is just Batman, 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 where you see, I think, Bruce Wayne once or twice.
Very rarely. Like, that show is mostly Batman teaming up with various other DC superheroes.
Which is funny because of how they brought back Tom Kenny to play
Eel O'Brien.
most people would know as Plastic Man. So we'll have to see how that goes. I just thought that was a very interesting, like, character to introduce into the world. I mean, who knows? They could be bringing in like other superheroes as the show goes on, or if the show is allowed to go on, because they also have Jack Ryder at one point. If y'all know who that is, he turns into the Creeper at one point. But no, most of the time we are just following everyone else but the Caped Crusader, which is why it works. I don't need every show to be Batman, Batman, Batman. As long as you make it compelling, then that's all that matters. And really, it's all about the corruption in Gotham and how that bleeds into every part of the city, even the part that is supposed to be protecting its citizens. They do not hide the fact and are unapologetic that a mass majority of the cops in Gotham's precinct are bought as or bent, as they say.
The only two cops that are like actually trying to do good are Commissioner Gordon and Renee Montoya. And she's not a cop,
Isn't she a detective or a private eye?
she's a detective. And then we have Barbara Gordon, who she works some sort of paralegal, but
Because at almost every turn, the show is heavy-handed with it saying, like, by the way, Harvey Bullock and Arnold Flass are not the best cops on the force.
yeah, no.
And I love the performances from John DiMaggio and Gary Anthony Williams. I think they work well off of one another. And I think that's just an interesting way to go with this show, because not every character gets like a build up to then their villain reveal, except for Harvey Dent, who only becomes Two-Face by episode 9 and 10.
Which was actually a really clever choice because for most of the show, they like these are all like sort of episodic villain of the week stories, but it's slowly building up to what I think is one of the best Two-Face stories ever told.
The thing that works in this show's favor is how it focuses on the tragedy side of things. As much as I love the original 90s cartoon and I love Batman in general, A lot of the problems with most adaptations in animation is that once they turn evil, they're evil. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is why I also like the fact that we don't get a Joker for the season. Most of these cartoons would have put Joker as the first villain. It's like that mid 2000s Batman, the Batman, where Joker was the villain in the first episode, in there where he was played by Kevin Michael Richardson. Here, there's no Joker. They have a mix of familiar and some lesser known villains this time around. Like instead of a normal penguin, we have a female penguin voiced by Minnie Driver.
Who is great, by the way.
I know, she's great. I wish they did a little more to make a better name instead of Oswalda Cobblepot, because it just sounds like the lazy way of just like, how do we name a female version of this? You just put an A at the end, baby. Minnie Driver is so delightful as a character. I wish we saw her more in this show in general, but like we've seen essentially every single version of Penguin possible. You have the creepy creature version of with Danny DeVito. You have the sophisticated villain, which is from the 90s. You have the more like not directly villainous, but obviously doing things under the table version in some cases. And then you have like the sleazy one from the mid 2000s one where he was voiced by Tom Kenny. So I'm glad that they went with a different direction with the Penguin. And then that also leads us to some of the other iterations of characters. Like we get a Harley Quinn without the Joker, where we have Dr. Harleen Quinzel, voiced by Jamie Chung. And I thought that was a really cool idea because, like, it was revealed that we were going to get Harley Quinn, but instead of her being attached to the hip with the Joker, she is her own character. And probably my favorite version of Harley Quinn so far because of that.
Something that's really cool about this interpretation is you have, Dr. Harleen Quinzel is kind of has like a kind more of a bubbly personality, very friendly. You can tell she
knows what she's doing.
Yeah, she knows what she's doing, but she also really cares for her friends, has a great relationship with Renee Montoya. But as Harley Quinn, she is honestly terrifying.
Well, she uses her psychology skills to work. And even though some people may say, well, her transformation to Harley Quinn is out of nowhere, it's really not. Rewatching the episode where she talks to Bruce after Bruce, slugs another person for making a joke about his mom's death, you can kind of see her change after that. Like where Bruce tries to excuse his current persona as, I just got a lot of resource and a lively social life. And she's like, note to self, rich people suck. And another different iteration that we have is for Clayface, voiced by
Dan Donahue,
where instead of being like this big shape-shifting blob of a character, he's more of a serial killer who happens to be able to disguise himself as other people. Like he has a more old school approach to his character, to where instead of just being this Lovecraftian monster of clay, he can disguise himself within the world as other actors, which we see as he does so throughout the episode he's introduced. The one character who doesn't quite get changed at all outside of maybe Penguin is Catwoman. The only thing that's different about her in this iteration is that she's more inspired by her 50s and 60s iteration with the whole cat ear purple dress getup.
and also that she comes from money, but then kind of
loses it all.
Yeah, regresses down to the level of a cat burglar. But yeah, pretty much every version of Selena Kyle is going to end up where you know her best.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, where else could you take Catwoman? Unless you want to go in a man-bat situation where she turns into like a werecat or whatever.
Yeah, but we're not touching that.
No. So other villains that we get introduced into these two episodes are like Firebug, which I thought was like the old school version of Firefly, but is an entirely different character, which I find interesting that it's just they just so happen to have two different arsonist villains that just happen to be named after bugs. And I really like the episode they introduce Firebug into because it's all about how the police are incapable of stopping Batman. So the police, instead of just saying like, hey, you know what, maybe we could be allies with Batman, they instead go out of their way to make trouble to get Batman, only to fail to capture him and then end up murdering Firebug. And like Firebug was, again, a tragic character, just someone who is not right in the head, who happened to have a fascination with the pyro. And that's what happens with Two-Face. Harvey Dent, while a punk for most of this first season, is still like, oh, he's that good person you want in your corner, even if he's obnoxious. And when we get to his tragic turn, I like that they designed him with a more subdued look. They don't try to do too radical skin tones like they normally do, like Batman Brave and the Bold or older versions where his one side of his face is green, or in the animated series version, it's blue.
Kind of reminds me more of like kind of how he's portrayed in The Dark Knight, where like yes, his face is like clearly destroyed, but it is the more grounded approach.
Exactly. And yet, while he does have some mental breaks where he does kill people, he's not entirely 100% evil, which I think is a very fascinating take to do with this version of Two-Face. Because at the end of the season, he's not really like full-blown evil Two-Face.
He's more like an anti-hero to some extent. Still like a villain to some extent, but he still wants to do the right thing. He wants justice. He's just going about it in a off-kilter way.
Exactly. And listen, you will get sprinklings of other potential future villains. Like we do see Cedric Yarborough as Rupert Thorne and Waylon Jones, who y'all would know as Killer Croc. I think what's interesting about how they build up this world is what other villains they use. One episode gives us Jim Craddock, aka Gentleman Ghost, who is normally a Green Lantern or Green Arrow villain. And I like that they don't try to make him some radical anti-hero, because the episode very much is like, no, man, Gentleman Ghost was the worst. Instead of stealing from the rich to give to the poor, he stole from the poor to give to the rich because he wanted to be part of that society.
Another cool like episode that has villains that I never thought I'd see in anything other than the comics. The episode Moving Target has Onomatopoeia as the main sort of villain of the week, and Deadshot. Floyd Lawton is the other assassin that's coming for the Gordon family.
I never heard of Onomatopoeia.
He was a Green Arrow villain created by Kevin Smith in the early 2000s, and he's a lot of fun.
So is that all he does is just say like, kapow, rack, snap?
Basically.
Like, he gets such a cool introduction in the episode, but then he goes down like a punk. I was a little disappointed in that, because it says that he's a marksman, but he doesn't do anything. I mean, I get that they're trying to stay away from all the super abilities and such, but I don't know. He just came off more like a mafia leader than an actual threat.
That's probably why they had to pair him with Deadshot because otherwise he'd either come off too OP or I don't know, maybe just not as impactful as he was in the comics.
Right, right. There's also something else that I really like about this show. And because I know you want to talk about some of the cameos that we see throughout this show. But I want to say that one of my favorite parts about this show is the voice cast. I think if you're going to try to do a noir take on Batman, like set it in the world of Humphrey Bogart movies, you need to pick very distinct voices for all these characters. And I really like Hamish Linklater as Bruce Wayne and Batman. He doesn't start out as good as I was hoping, but as the season went through, I think he easily fits into the role perfectly fine.
It may take him like some time to get acclimated to the voice, but once he really settles in, he nails it.
I also like Jason Watkins as Alfred Pennyworth. I like that no matter the iteration or how young Alfred is compared to, because sometimes he's more middle aged and then sometimes he's like elderly, he is still going to snap back at Bruce. I love the episode where they fight Clayface and Batman's like, "What do you think?" And then Alfred is like, "Well, she's no insert actors here." And then Bruce is just like, "I mean something important." And I also like Crystal Joy Brown as Barbara. Like we said earlier, I like John DiMaggio and Gary Anthony Williams, and Michelle C. Bonilla as Renee Montoya. Eric Morgan Stewart was James Gordon. We already talked about Jamie, who plays Harley Quinn. Diedrich Bader does Harvey Dent, and I think he does a good job. He's not as comedic or tongue-in-cheek about being a slimeball at points. I think Diedrich finds a good balance, like a toned balance with playing up the more playboy side of Harvey and then playing the more serious parts of when he becomes like Two-Face and such.
Something else that's kind of brilliant about Bader's performance, he really kind of turns Harvey Dent very slowly into Two-Face. I don't just mean like the Batman villain. I mean like he actually is a bit two-faced in that he does care about being on the right side of justice. He does it in like a sleazy fashion too, to the point where like the entire police force hates his guts for it.
And we also have people like Yuri Lowenthal, Gray Delisle, Roger Craig Smith, Tom Kenny, William Salyers, Vincent Piazza, Jason Marsden, James Arnold Taylor shows up, Kimberly Brooks. Christina Ricci is pretty good as Selena Kyle. It's hard to mess up a character like Selena with being both playful, flirty, but also don't mess with me way of going. I loved that Onomatopoeia was voiced by Reed Scott because we just literally talked about My Adventures with Superman where he plays Clark's dad.
Oh
I
yeah.
just I just think that's kind of funny. McKenna Grace shows up as Nocturna. The most, at least right now, supernatural villain that they've had to deal with. We've talked about Minnie Driver already. Toby Stevens plays Jim Craddock, Gentleman Ghost. We got David Krumholtz. Haley Joel Osment shows up in one episode. Well, the same one with Nocturna. Paul Scheer plays the two sons of the Penguin. And I wouldn't have known that. I thought they were played by two different people. So
Yeah, that's kind of cool how Paul played both the
Aaron
sons.
and Ronald Cobblepot. We got Jackie Hoffman, David Kaye, Jim Peary, Peter Jessop. Jeff Bennett shows up a couple times, and I miss Jeff Bennett. I love his voice performances. Lacey Chabert, we got Donna Lynn Champlin. Sungwon Cho shows up, Josh Keaton, Kerry Walgren. And at the very end of the season, we do get one tiny glimpse of the Joker. Like, I know we were going to get the Joker at one point, but I'm glad that they had enough confidence in this show to not use him instantly or to make him some kind of overshadowing villain of the whole season.
They did the right thing by just teasing him enough. We know this is getting a second season, so I'm pretty sure we'll see more of him later, but just that little tease was a nice way to end this first season.
Now, Mike, you noticed, I think, a lot more of the DC cameos than I did because I forgot that Deadshot was technically in this season. So, what were some of your favorite little, like, Leo DiCaprio pointing from the couch moments?
Okay, so in that same episode with Deadshot and Onomatopoeia, the other officer that's with the Gordons is Jim Corrigan, who becomes Spectre.
Oh, yes, Spectre. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, he showed up in Brave and the Bold, voiced by Mark Hamill.
the coolest one. The episode with Natalia Knight, all of the children that she kidnaps and steals their essence from, they're all based on Robins. Dickie is obviously Dick Grayson. Jace is Jason Todd. And then there's Steffi Brown, which is Stephanie Brown. Obviously, there's Carrie, who's Carrie Kelly.
That's cool. I didn't really think about that at first because I was thinking, oh, these are just random kids. But of course, they have to plug in every single Robin. I mean, not every single one, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do feel bad that Tim got left out, but eh.
Is Tim like the middle child of the Robins? Because it seems like he he got left out like that, man.
I swear, ever since Damian Wayne was conceived, Tim has just been getting the short end of the stick every single time.
Oh, that's unfortunate. And like some of the other Batman-based villains, like Lucius Fox, do show up, but it's mostly there for to help build up the Batman universe. Like I said, I like that Batman is not just the I know what to do at every single moment superhero in this. Even if he succeeds in some of the episodes, like stopping Penguin from using that friggin' giant cannon on Gotham, he still fails in the long run. He doesn't consider his short-term wins as victories.
Everything comes at a cost, at least in the first half, but even the second half, things like what happens to Harvey Dent and just the general perception of Batman in this show. This is very much the antithesis of Batman, the animated series.
Yeah. I like that they just dive into the psychology of a lot of the characters, what make like their drives and such. And it just makes for a very different version of Batman that I like because I don't think we quite got a noir thriller Batman, or like at least since the 90s. But even in the 90s was more about the action. And then as other iterations came and went, there wasn't a whole lot of emphasis put on the world's greatest detective. Like he's a freaking detective. Why isn't he, doing detective work?
Exactly.
It's like when someone said, "Oh, by the way, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mutant Mayhem are actually teenagers," and it's like you're telling me this whole time the TMNT have never been teenagers,
Right?
So it's very interesting with how we finally have the world's greatest detective doing detective work for a majority of the episodes. And they do work like very solid little murder mysteries, especially with the Clayface episode where you slowly start to find out that Clayface has been using his face shifting ability to basically go on a murder spree. Now, animation wise, I think this show looks fine. I think Bruce Timm has definitely grown in terms of his usual visual flair for character designs. I am glad that not everyone has the same body type issues that a lot of Bruce Timm's stuff used to have. Like, a lot of people make fun of One Piece for the two different body types that male and female characters have.
Hmm.
But I never see people say that same thing about Bruce Timm and his work on like Batman, Superman, and the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited shows. Every single female has the same body type in that show, with maybe an emphasis put on one part of them or another here and there, but they all had the same hourglass figure. Here, men and women all have different body types, and I like that.
There are some characters who are like very obviously the Bruce Timm style. Like there are scenes where Batman looks very much like classic Batman, but as far as everyone else, he's really sort of diversified as far as like his character designs go.
I think the Batman in this one is a little more distinct than being close to the original 90s version. He's a little more lean. Like, he still has this square chin, but his body is not as triangular as he would soon then become with the later part of the Batman and then Justice League series, which fits into the fact that this is supposed to be Batman in his early days. Why would he be jacked as hell day one on the job? He knows he's going to have to build up his muscles as time goes on. Now, the only thing I really wish they worked on was the visual presentation, like the lighting and shadow work. This is supposed to be a noir thriller, and yet it feels like every other DC animation project out there right now.
I think it could use a little bit more film grain to give it that classic film noir look.
I wanted more of the striking lighting and shadow work from the 90s show in this one. It makes the most sense, but it just looks flat most of the time. Like, it has the look, the 90s show, but without any of the cool, striking imagery that comes with it. And I'm just going to chalk that up to a production timeline thing because, well, this show was almost on the chopping block. Oh, it's so weird that WB apparently thought this show wasn't going to do well, so they were going to get rid of it. And then Amazon is like, I don't know, man. I guess I'll take your show, and then we'll have a lot of the acclaim. Thank you, Warner Brothers. It's weird. I don't know, man. It's so odd that WBD and David Zaslav thought this was cuttable.
I don't get it. And the best part is, once Amazon acquired the rights to it, they've been doing a bang up job of promoting it and making the premiere feel like an event. Like, I know that we try to be timely with like new big animated shows, but I have never been more like anxious to binge this like the day that it premiered on Prime.
And I had screeners, so I saw it like a little bit beforehand, before it hit Prime, and I knew it's like, oh man, we got something special here. We got something good here, which shows, given the right production and team and the right artists, writers, and talent, you can make a really good show based off of an IP, which doesn't mean I want everything to be based on IP, but it's why I'm glad that we got stuff like the Suicide Squad Isekai and then the Creature Commandos coming out in December and such. Because you gotta give them some wiggle room. Let people get creative. And I definitely would like to see another season of this show. I would want to see what else they could do with some of these characters. I want to see Batman deal with the fact that he has been suppressing the trauma of his parents' murder. I want to see more of these villains and the takes that they have. I want to see how they handle someone like Bane and Scarecrow.
Ooh.
Like, because it's very obvious they're keeping us to a more grounded world. So how do you take someone like Bane, whose major thing is basically becoming the Hulk via steroids?
That'll be interesting. There's so many other villains that I would love to see like this interpretation of. Like, what do you do about Mr. Freeze or,
Like the
well,
Mad Hatter.
or Riddler?
It's funny that Matt Reeves is a producer on this show, and I wonder if they're kind of like, "Hey, Matt, could we take your idea of like the Riddler done as the Zodiac killer and put him into this show, please?" I'm sure he's going to be like, "No, you can't. Make up your own version." Which is what has been fun about some of the Batman iterations, that the Riddler has been different from time to time. One thing I do want to see in this upcoming season, since we are now going to get Joker, I want Joker and Harley Quinn to be their own individual villain. I don't want to
Yes.
see them together. I'm so tired of Harley Quinn and Joker as characters that we see constantly, no matter what show we watch. Like, listen, I love the Harley Quinn TV show, and I'm going to be very curious how that Joker Part 2 works out with Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. But the best thing to happen with this show was making Harley Quinn her own entity. I don't want her to get sucked into the world of the Joker. I want Joker to be this unapproachable sociopath. Kind of like the one where, like the version we see of him in Under the Red Hood, where, he's in that version voiced by John DiMaggio. Like, I want to see that Joker. And it kind of comes off like that's who we're getting, but we'll have to see how that goes. Either way, chalk this up to another really solid, good piece of superhero media that shows that people do want superhero stuff. They just want it to be good. And I know that can be subjective and whatever, but considering all that has happened with superhero media these past few years, it kind of shows what we want in our superhero media
And
now.
what it feels like so far over the past like couple years, animation is where superhero media thrives. And we just talked not too long ago about My Adventures with Superman, X-Men 97, Invincible,
Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
and then coming up later, we will be talking about Suicide Squad Isekai, the Kite Man show, Harley Quinn comes back, and Creature Commandos. We're eating good for basically the rest of the year.
Exactly. So we'll have to see how things go. But for next time, we are going to talk about the summer 2024 anime season and our many, maybe not frustrated takeaways from this season. We'll have to see.
And until next time, Cameron, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Cam's Eye View. I have my own website called camseyeview.biz where I review animated films and shows from around the world called The Other Side of Animation. I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/camseyeview. That's where you can find me.
And you guys can find me on various social media sites at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/Coach K42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and that place at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser. Consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/Renegade Pop Culture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. You need to escape, so do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Animation. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.